Talk about movies with you. Talk about movies with you. We'll learn about behind the scenes and deeper meanings, 'cause this is just a film review. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Film Recommendations. This episode's film is the 2004 New Line Cinema release Blade Trinity, starring Wesley Snipes, Ryan Reynolds, and Jessica Biel. Now, it's kind of obvious why they named it Blade Trinity for a couple of reasons. For one, it's the third film in the franchise, and for another, it features kind of your three heroes. They decided to kill off Chris Christopherson's character in this one. And I honestly watched it when it first came out somewhere in like 2004, 2005. It was in one of those kind of blur years where um, I was just kind of watching it to watch it with friends. You know, and frankly, all of the Blade movies that came out then and all the vampire movies like After or Underworld and Underworld Evolution, um, it all kind of blurs together. Um, I remember that the first Blade movie gave an introduction to the character and the world of the vampires and everything for the film, and it had Stephen Dorff playing the character Frost, and that one, uh, that bit of casting won a great deal of credit with people because Stephen Dorff was a very hot ticket for uh, for films. A lot of people were competing for having him in films now. Maybe not so much. You don't hear as much about him. And uh, he, as I remember, had just been in Cecil B. Demented, which was written and directed by John Waters, and is a fantastic movie if you haven't had a chance to see it. Uh, so that'll be a little mini film recommendation is Cecil B. Demented, uh, with all kinds of great actors in it. Maggie Gyllenhaal is in it, for people who like Maggie Gyllenhaal. Some of her roles have been a little bit harder to watch. Um, she was in Secretary, which is a very weird uh, kind of film in which uh, a uh, a business broker type guy basically enters into some kind of domination submission relationship with Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, who's a cutter, um, prior to taking up her job as secretary, and it's a non-sexual relationship simply based on control. It's a very weird film, and I don't recommend it for people who aren't into it. I first watched it on I think it was Oxygen or something like that. Like I said, it's a weird film. Um, and she was also in a film called, I think it was Interrogation, with Glenn Close and whole. It was a bit of an independent movie uh, in which basically the same interrogation is done on two individuals. One is an American woman in, uh, I think it's supposed to be the People's Republic of China, as I remember, and the other is, and it's conducted by uh, an Asian young man, um, and the other is a a Middle Eastern person interrogated by Glenn Close, who is of course a white woman, and so it was kind of uh, confrontational in terms of the racism that is inherent in profiling, and it shows the violation that they do for the violation of of liberties and how the information that they get uh, from certain forms of interrogation, like torture, is never accurate because um, by the time they're done, usually a person will say whatever, you know, betray whoever, just in order to make the suffering stop. That being said, fortunately, we didn't have to beg for the suffering to stop with the Blade series. Wesley Snipes unfortunately got himself imprisoned, and that kind of put an end to any further Blade films. Plus, with this one, they kind of signed off on it because by that time, I think it had been, roughly 4 or 5 years since the first Blade movie came out. Um, this one features an interesting uh, group of characters. I will point out, uh, as long as we're talking about the bizarre torture, sadomasochism, bondage, domination, submission kick, that the one villainess here, uh, who I guess used to be Ryan Reynolds' character's girlfriend at some point when he was a vampire. Spoiler alert. Um, yeah, belated spoiler alert. Anyway, uh, she in the interrogation of his character because he gets captured. Um, Basically plays this role of kind of a dominatrix in a lot of ways. She's wearing the spiked heels and she digs one of the spiked heels into him, which is something I've heard about being done. You know, he's like on his knees, chained with his shirt off, and he has like a wound, a stab wound or something, and she just kind of digs her heel in to it, and he's like, ah, it's really, yeah, kind of a weird thing. But, it probably got some people a little bothered and some people a little hot. So whoever, you know, it's a bit of a strange scene to watch. But, at some points she also is smoking a cigarette and then slaps him and it's like, at this point we're just getting into pure S&M stuff. And of course Ryan Reynolds' character is a smart aleck in the film. So anyway, I found that while Ryan Reynolds' character was well fleshed out, um, Jessica Biel's character was largely stoic and not very interesting or compelling. I mean, Reynolds' character is easily very identifiable with. He kind of, he and Blade are kind of comrades. Um, Beale's character, who is Abigail Whistler, the daughter of uh, the character of Whistler. Again, spoiler, he dies in the film. Anyway, she kind of picks up as his compadre, and it's not a bad dynamic. Definitely not a bad dynamic. Um, she ends up, basically being his number two, and Ryan is kind of under both of them. Um, so it's kind of an odd dynamic. I think what they were possibly thinking of doing was maybe having a spin-off movie with Ryan Reynolds' character and Jessica Biel's character if the film was a success. But unfortunately, as I remember, Blade Trinity didn't do very well. It actually has a surprising number of a surprising amount of originality, and of course the angles at which different scenes are shot are pretty predictable for an action movie. The way that they just kind of show things. Um, and really some of it's unnecessary, I think. Just the extent to which they went to get interesting angles and cutting very quickly between one to another. Um, they go for some interesting semi-comedic effects with Ryan Reynolds since he's a bit of a funny guy. Um, it's actually hard to believe that Ryan Reynolds is still playing young men, uh, the young male lead, when this film is about 7 years old now. It was released in 2004, as I said, and um, and he was playing the young male lead there. Jessica Biel was, uh, of course, playing the young female lead because she's still a fairly young woman, and of course she was recently in I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, which is a pretty funny movie, and she does a good job in that. Just to segue off a little bit to talk about that. Um, she doesn't really stand out as a character. It's basically her job to uh, say the lines, look pretty while doing it, and uh, be, you know, eye candy for the 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 heterosexual men and the bisexual and lesbian women and men, bisexual men and women, and lesbian women and lesbian men in the audience. Anyway, um, and that's also kind of her job here. Is she's just kind of eye candy. Um, and they basically, I think, yeah, basically they wanted to put Ryan Reynolds in something, and they wanted Jessica Biel to uh, be a sex symbol for it. They needed a sex symbol, and they needed someone who was still um, interesting to people, so they got Jessica Biel in on it. And she kind of phoned it in. Wesley Snipes produced this film, and so like right at the beginning, he's doing all kinds of little cute, oh, why would he actually do that in real life ever kind of stuff. Like just before he just before they give the title of the film, um, Snipes or Blade uh, stabs a vampire in the heart. The vampire falls to ashes. Snipes um, takes his knife, which is kind of a sling blade kind of deal. It kind of swings out on a line. Anyway, um, which actually seems kind of dangerous. Anyway, and then it goes back into the handle, and he gives it a little wipe off. Just like literally pulls back in the handle. 1, 2, 3, wipe off to looks the other way as if to be like funny or cute or something. And then in a similar deal, Snipes jumps onto the back of a semi being driven by Whistler, rolls off and lands on the hood of a guy's car, and the guy's just looking at him. And Blade gives a big fake smile, like, and it's like, what? Why would he do that? It makes no sense. So right away, the intro is trying to make Blade too much of a kind of cute, funny character to watch. It's you know when Snipes is Blade, Blade is supposed to be a badass. He's not supposed to be really that funny, um, except maybe in exchanges with the villains or something like that, making smart comments, kind of like Ryan Reynolds' character does. Um, anyway, I watched it again just to kind of get a sense of the plot, and they go for like the most predictable plot in all of vampire stuff, uh, where the vampires went to go find the body of Dracula to awaken him so that they could kill Blade. Um, and they try and frame Blade for murder so that he'll get arrested and sent to prison or the insane asylum or something. Um, but they had to involve Dracula. They couldn't involve Elizabeth Bathory, who is a lesser known, um, royal who was reported to conduct certain um, blood-related rituals. Um, of course, Dracula actually was reported to impale uh, impale uh, people who opposed him, enemies, and then have their blood collected, and then dip his bread in it and eat it, which apparently is just a myth. Um, but Elizabeth Bathory, it's actually documented, would had this blood fixation. She was a incredibly sick, sadistic woman, and what happened there was uh, she would bathe in human blood, and she would have like uh, young women's uh, throats cut and their wrists cut so that they would bleed, and she would stand there in a white gown, perfectly white gown, until it soaked up all the blood and everything and turned bright red, basically. And it was some kind of obsession she had with this particular ritual. So it was kind of a weird thing that she did. And a lot of vampire fiction goes to Elizabeth Bathory, who was by far more sadistic as a historical character. Um, because Dracula, Vlad the Impaler was really just apparently not that cruel a despot. Uh, he was apparently he suffered a very bad PR campaign after his death. But he was apparently a celebrated general, a celebrated commander. Uh, People didn't suffer under him. Uh, his kingdom just ended up coming to a lot of attacks or something. I don't know the exact history, but apparently Vlad the Impaler was not, you know, a mass butcher or something. He just, he didn't take crap from enemies and such. Um, but he was actually apparently recognized by religious officials as being a very devout man and a very faithful man. Anyway, but getting back to the actual movie, I found the New Line Platinum Series version of this film, unrated version, uh, for about $4. So easy to pick up, cheap. I think it might have been so cheap because there's a little bit of damage to the case here. Like maybe they just got a little liberal with the box cutter or something. It was kind of weird. I don't know exactly how damage would occur like this to the case, but there was no damage to the discs, so whatever. But yeah, it was $4, so not bad a price. So you can probably pick this up at any used DVD place for probably about that much, maybe less. Um, and I'll just say real quick that the two discs come with actually two different commentaries, which I thought was really cool. One is with director David Goyer and Ryan Reynolds, and I guess the other is with Jessica Biel, producers and crew. Um, there's an extended cut of the film that's rated R. I guess the theatrical version must have been rated PG-13 or something. I mean, it's a movie with a lot, and I mean a lot of violence, including dogs getting killed. They're vampire dogs, so it's okay. I think your kids won't be too upset by it. Um, Although vampire dogs will probably give them nightmares anyway, as will vampires. So, you know, don't show this movie to your kids to begin with. I don't teenagers okay, but yeah, and most of your teenagers will probably want to see the vampires that sparkle. Anyway, so this isn't a bad movie. It just yeah, they seem to be phoning it in. Some other features, an unrated version of the film that's 10 minutes longer. Okay, so that must be the um, yeah, that's the extended version. It has 10 more minutes. I don't know where they added the 10 minutes, so don't ask. And then the R-rated version of the film would be the theatrical release. Um, that's the two versions and the two commentaries are both on the first disc, and on the second disc are the blooper reel, the alternate ending, the documentary Daywalkers, Night Stalkers, and Familiars Inside the World of Blade Trinity, and it's apparently a 16-part behind the scenes documentary. You know, I may watch that when, I'm actually really interested in how Blade Trinity was made, but not terribly. Um, I will say that uh, Parker Posey plays the villainess in this film, and she is good. She's good in everything. I can't think of a role that Parker Posey was in that I didn't like. She was in Superman Returns. I loved her in that. She was in uh, To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. I loved her in that. She was, of course, very young back then. Um, she's just a phenomenal actress. And she was also kind of eye candy for the guys, except she was evil eye candy. And Ryan Reynolds says something that absolutely uh, would have made me chuckle the first time I had heard it, and that is he tells her that her haircut looks absolutely ridiculous, and it's true. They give a little side profile, and she has kind of a mohawk, and then a really fanned out ponytail and everything, and it ends up making her look like a coral reef sunfish, if you know what I mean with the large dorsal fin and then the big flat tail. Anyway, so Parker Posey is great in this. Um, oh yeah, Triple H is in it. I'm just looking over all of this because I forgot, all the different people that were in it. And then there's another actress who plays kind of a small role in this, and she plays oh, what is the character's name? It's on the tip of my brain. Anyway, she was also in uh, Slums of Beverly Hills, if you remember that, and a few other movies that I'm totally blanking on. But she plays a blind character in this who kind of is also the brains of the operation, developing different stuff. And then I think it's the comedian Mario Cantone, who really can't catch a break with his acting roles, plays kind of the weapons maker guy for um, the Night Stalkers uh, that Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds are. And what I wish that they had done, I wish that they had actually made this into a decent enough movie where they could have had a spin-off film about the Night Stalkers, because then um, you couldn't have had Mario Cantone necessarily come back. You could have had them all come back if it was a prequel, which would have been okay. Um, and then have a sequel in which it's just Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds, who are the only surviving Night Stalkers from this little cell, because the idea is that Night Stalkers are everywhere. There's cells all around the world of this group, and so it's kind of a cool um, idea that then they would be able to kind of replace their team in some ways. And then, of course, they would have the character of Zoe, who is in this film, uh, they could have had her grown up a little bit and kind of coming into her own as a character, and maybe going through some struggles um, of her own, and maybe being ready to take up the mantle of Night Stalker or something. It's a little pipe dream, uh, and they're not too old where they couldn't make that kind of film. They could kind of flash back maybe to missions that they did, kind of like what they did with X-Men Origins Wolverine, where they flashed back and then they flashed more towards what is the present time of the film. Um, anyway, it like I said, it's an idea, but the Blade series is pretty much dead. They made three movies out of it. The second film took place in Russia, I guess, and just wasn't very interesting. And it basically was very reminiscent of Underworld or something. Yeah, when I watched the second one, I kind of tuned out, I'll admit. I was just not that interested in in uh, whatever. I think it was just simply called Blade 2, which is kind of disappointing that then they would call it Blade 2 and then Blade Trinity, and they just kind of tossed the word Trinity in there to kind of associate it with the Matrix or something. It's not the best kind of title job. It's kind of like when they had Batman and Robin in a film called Batman Forever, and then when they introduced Batgirl, they titled it Batman and Robin, which ended up being the worst movie of the franchise, easily. Anyway, yeah, so uh, like I said, it's not too expensive to get this, and it's it's a nice movie as it is. It has plenty of action and cool stuff. Um, Nothing too risque in terms of sexuality or anything. So sexual content you don't have to worry about. Violence you would have to worry about. You wouldn't want to show it to like anyone younger than 11, maybe 13, because they might, you know, especially if it's like a little kid that wants to go and then play fight. That wasn't encouraged when I was a kid, um, play fighting. So it's not exactly something that you want to do, but as an adventure movie, it's a lot of fun. I find it a little bit dumb that they decide to use medieval weaponry and stuff. Jessica Biel's fighting is really slow, but she's not this action heroine, you know. I I like seeing her do her acting. That's perfectly fine. Ryan Reynolds in this, he beefed up for this role, uh, and this was obviously before he was Deadpool, and before he was the Green Lantern, before he was any of those things. He was uh, this guy who got kind of kicked around in Blade Trinity. Um, I kind of like the fact that they have a little kind of rainbow holographic detail to the cover of the DVD. That's just kind of a nice touch. Give it a little extra flair. Um, make it stand out a little bit. Um, they don't have subtitles for all of the bonus content, which I find a little disappointing, but what are you going to do? Um, I like subtitles because sometimes it's not always easy to hear what they're saying. Anyway, so yeah, I would honestly really recommend this just for the excellent cast and the good level of special effects. They don't go over the top with it. They don't rub it in your face. The special effects are there for the storytelling. The weird camera angles and the quick cuts, on the other hand, do get a little bit distracting, and you're like, okay, I'm watching a movie, not, oh, what's happening now? What's going to happen next? And that's really the trick with a good film is storytelling. Anyway, I haven't watched it with both of the with either of the commentaries going, and I haven't checked out the content on the second disc. But commentary is commentary. It may be good, it may be bad, um, and generally my expectation is that it's going to be so-so. Uh, the bonus content on a second disc is rarely ever that interesting. It's just kind of uh, so that they can sell a slightly more wonderful version of a film. And I'm guessing that this one has been out for since it's been out for a while. It probably this one was probably sitting on a shelf and was a closeout deal, and so they just decided, oh well, this might be a hot ticket item. So they made a sale with me um, because a friend of mine actually recommended this. They actually liked this because they like Ryan Reynolds. So I thought, what the heck? I forgot that I had actually seen this because, as I said, Underworld and Blade, all those movies came out about the same time, except for Rise of the Lycans, and all of it just kind of blurred together. It was like, okay, vampires, werewolves, even Van Helsing kind of blurred into it a little bit. Um, I remember a lot more Van Helsing though because I actually won a copy of it and then watched it a few times because it was a new movie, and I liked a lot of the different touches of it. As it is, like I said, the real standout actors in this film are Parker Posey and Ryan Reynolds, um, but also the girl who played the blind mom techie person. I don't remember the actress's name. I'm sorry to the actress. I will try and post it in. Actually, I just remembered I have internet connection right now. So what I will do is look it up. Okay. But you look at everything they did with um, with Parker Posey's makeup and everything, and she really stands out as an amazing character. Oh, just looking here. Summerfield. The character's name is Summerfield, and the actress's name is Natasha Lyonne. Uh, Not a name that you hear too often, but yeah, she's been in uh, Slums of Beverly Hills, and I'm just looking at what else. Who else was in all of this? Uh, oh yeah, John Michael Higgins plays Dr. Edgar Vance, and he really nailed his character down, even though it was a bit of a small character. Okay, all right, that's where I remember this actress from. She's also in But I'm a Cheerleader as the main character, and is actually a really uh, does a really good job there. Um, it's a really funny movie if you ever see it. Natasha Lyonne. It also features RuPaul and several other really cool, funny actors playing different parts. She was also apparently in American Pie, and I can see her on the cover, but I didn't like American Pie, so whatever. Um, just looking at what she's been in recently, she's been in Nightclub as Mrs. Keaton. She's been in All About Evil as Deborah Tennis, and Heterosexuals as Elia. So apparently she's had a very busy, wonderful career lately, which is great. She was in Goy Band in 2008. And just looking, oh, she was in Robots, which you may or may not remember was the computer animated film about robots. And in that one, she played Loretta Gear Grinder. And I'm just looking. She was in Old School, for folks who remember that. She was on the TV series Grounded for Life, uh, which people may not remember. But I actually remember her character in that, I think. She was in Scary Movie 2, and I'm just really rolling it back here on things. But yeah, I'm a Cheerleader came out in 1999. Um, she had also just been in Detroit Rock City and American Pie, and the previous year was in Slums of Beverly Hills, Krippendorf's Tribe, which was a bit of a Disney flop with Richard Dreyfuss in it. And she was also in Dennis the Menace in 1993 as Polly. And before that, she was actually on an episode of Pee Wee's Playhouse. Holy cow. So, anyway, this is just kind of a cool little thing to do. I like to do that from time to time, lesser known actors. Um, some people may not remember Parker Posey. I'm just going to take a look here at stuff that she's been in recently. But she's a beautiful actress if you ever have a chance to check her out. Um, and she's been big she was, ever since she was, um, a rising teen starlet. Anyway, let's see. So she is she apparently was in Superman Returns, the video game, in 2010, reprising her role as Kitty Kowalski. Let's see. She was in The Eye, Broken English, The Return of Jezebel James as character Sarah Tompkins. Back in 2008, this was. Currently, uh, she's in the film Inside Out, uh, Sunny Side Up, Highland Park, Price Check, and Hemingway and Gellhorn. So, of course, she's busy because she's still a very big star in my mind, and I think in a lot of people's minds. Of course, Wesley Snipes is currently incarcerated, and I'm just looking. I don't think they even give Mario Cantone a credit right up front here. No, on on IMDb. And really, I'm gonna speak up a little bit about IMDb because I was browsing around there earlier, and I have a real problem with one particular aspect of IMDb, and that is that I opened up to it, and first off, you have all these ads that push all your content down, so you have to start scrolling and scrolling. Um, and if you have a touchpad, as I do, that can get a bit annoying. I have a mouse, but the battery's running a bit low, so it's not good to use it too much. But that aside, then on top of that, I get a little notification at the bottom of my web browser saying, this kind of program may be harmful to your computer. Are you sure you want to continue downloading it? And I didn't authorize or initiate any downloads. And the only kind of program that really goes to is an execute file, a .exe file, which is specifically like either installing a program or installing a piece of software or something. And there's no reason why IMDb should be trying to install anything onto my machine for any reason, cookies or otherwise. Um, it shouldn't even need to install cookies or anything. So this is just very frustrating. It's bad enough that if you go on Rotten Tomatoes, you get a full screen ad that unless you open your web browser full screen, and then click skip this ad, it will not simply move on to the actual page you were looking for. It's a very annoying process these days, having to look up any kind of movie information, movie reviews, what have you. Um, that is where I try and save you the trouble, because all you have to do is load up YouTube, go to this page, and sit through a guy staring into his computer and looking off to the sides constantly, um, and going off into several side topics about various actors, actresses, directors, producers, writers, and various other things. Um, like I said, as it is, the plot is pretty predictable. Good guys win, bad guys lose. Um, it doesn't come too close, really, at any given point where you think that they might lose. Uh, they toss in a little gasp plot twist uh, when oh, what is her name? Uh, Leon something Leon. When her character dies, um, she records a video talking about this virus that they introduced earlier in the movie as the plot device for the movie, where they were going to cure vampires, um, kill all the vampires by curing them and stuff. Um, one, they had to get it into the first vampire, Dracula, which is like, um, no. Anyway, um, two, I, uh, the they only produced enough of it so that you get one shot with it. Three, the cure may kill Blade. Oh no, it's only the last movie. Who cares? Um, but yeah, so and it can either be fired from a gun or attached to an arrow. And Jessica Biel, her big deal is firing arrows at things like she's the freaking Green Arrow or Hawkeye or something. Um, it's her main weapon, and she's awkwardly trying to fight with a quiver on her back, and somehow the arrows don't fly out or whatever. So I'm just like, yeah, right. Ugh, medieval weaponry in the middle of fighting vampires. Really cheesy. Anyway, so yeah, they instead of firing it from a gun, which would be quicker, she fires it not just from a bow and arrow, but from a bow and arrow through glass that then magically shatters as she fires it. Now, I don't know. Now she was working on building up the speed of the arrows so that they flew faster, which would then probably put enough force that then the glass would shatter. But the problem with firing an arrow through glass, and this is not safety glass or anything, the way it shattered, this was regular glass up in a skyscraper, is that when that glass breaks and shatters and falls, it's going to knock the arrow off its course. And that arrow already wobbles considerably as it fires. They show it being perfectly straight and rigid, um, but arrows just naturally tend to bend uh, back and forth as they fly. They don't just go straight. So it's a really bizarre kind of deal, and I'm not sure where they got the idea that if, why she wouldn't just break the glass with something, you know? I don't know. I'm it's movie magic. It's supposed to be a magical arrow that, like all her other arrows, is able to not just hit somebody or something, but actually can hit a steel door and drill its way through a steel door and then flash ultraviolet light that kills the vampire or something. And I'm just like, too convenient. They're trying too hard to make bow and arrow a practical weapon in close quarters combat when the bow and arrow is a long distance kind of weapon. They could have just as easily given her like a sniper rifle of sorts or something. Something. They even have a really big gun that they have her carry around. And instead, she uses a bow and arrow. And instead of, you know, using any other kind of practical weapon, they give her a, a weapon that looks similar to a bow and arrow, but has a laser line between these 2 points, so that you have to awkwardly flop this thing around you, and then it folds back up into this weird little kind of ball with a handle kind of deal. It's just a weird idea. It doesn't really work for me as being all that practical or effective as weaponry. They talk about how how this ultraviolet laser will cut through a vampire like a hot knife through butter, and I'm like, pretty sure that an ultraviolet laser would cut through anything like a hot knife through butter because it's ultraviolet light is really intense light on the on the spectrum of of even remotely visible light. Ultraviolet isn't really even visible to the naked eye, and it's like so intense. UVA, which is lower level even, um, will burn your skin and stuff. Not as severely as UVB, but UVA will easily burn your skin, cause cataracts and damage to your retinas and all other kinds of bad stuff. It'll bleach your hair, and it can be a little bit dangerous. It can possibly cause melanoma or skin cancer in long-term large enough doses, but generally is harmless. UVB, on the other hand, is very, very harmful. Um, but UVA will still can still do a lot, and if it were a laser of even just UVA, first off, you would barely be able to see it. They make it like it's a white light, and secondly, it would still cut through whatever just fine. But of course, being a sci-fi movie, they had to make it look like movie lasers, which is actually what they're talking about is superheated plasma. The way it was looking was superheated plasma. They said it was hot as the sun, so whatever. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, plot device, plot device. She only uses it once in the entire movie, and I think they set it up purely so that they could have that one point in the fight scene where she cut a guy in two instead of doing something else. Whatever. Anyway, it's a bad movie, but it's not a bad action movie if you don't care about reality or any of that stuff. So, anyway, Blade Trinity 2004 by Marvel Pictures and New Line Cinema, which is, I believe, a Disney um, company. Yeah, anyway, rated R, so don't watch it with the kiddos, but you can take a 13-year-old or something to go see it. Or you can sit down and watch it with a 13-year-old. Um, Not a lot of sexual content, a lot of violence, but it's all like killing vampires, so don't worry too much. A little bit of comedy to it, but not very light-hearted. So, um, fine for grown-ups, but not the most engaging intellectually. Anyway, so that's it for this episode of Film Recommendations. Sorry for rambling so much. Bye-bye.